All right, Nathan, we finally are jumping onto an episode that we've been trying to organize for a while and get a vet on here.
Yeah, I think this is one that everyone in the industry should be a little bit excited for. I mean, I can think of one other podcast just right off the top of my head that's done something like this. So I just think it's important to, you know, keep having these conversations and expand our horizons into the medical side of our exotic pets. So, Lucas, you want to kind of intro what we're going to be talking about tonight?
Yeah, so episode 65, we're going to have on Dr. Rob Koch, and not only is he an amazing uh, uh, exotic vet, but he's also my vet for my animals. If any of you haven't listened to the episode where, I had to put down one of my snakes towards the beginning of treatment, Dr. Rob Koch was helping me along with that. But yeah, what's great and super lucky that I have in my back door here is he's worked with large constrictors and is actually the vet for the San Antonio Zoo here. So we're not just going to be talking about retics or snakes, but just we're going to dive into a bunch of information in regards to just exotic animal keeping in general. But I want to preface this before we even jump in. I think it's important that all of us has a vet nearby. And what I mean by nearby is I'm fortunate enough this one's 15 minutes down the road, right? That's lucky for many people. I know a lot of you listening are from rural towns, and it's a 2-hour drive to a
Even in
vet.
Salt Lake, when I'm like 15 minutes away from everything, I still think my exotic vet's probably about 30, 45 minutes out.
Exactly. And so the important part is just to have one, even if it's 2 hours out for an emergency or someone you can call and consult to if they know that you're far away. And hopefully you can find one that you can see once or twice and then be willing to take phone calls. But uh, yeah, we're gonna jump in. And hopefully you guys enjoy this one. But before we get started, just a reminder for those of you that are watching, drop comments down below. Go ahead and hit the notification bell if you guys are subscribed already, and if you're not, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if those of you that like to clean cages while you listen, we're also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Nathan,
I figure that's how most of our audience consumes it. I even listen to our podcast every once in a while, just while I'm
you're talking
cleaning
about
cages.
Spotify or yeah,
No,
exactly.
no, no. I'll throw it on the computer and watch it
Oh,
too.
okay,
Like, yeah,
fair.
that's why I was sending you critiques this weekend. I was
Yeah,
cleaning cages and being like,
uh,
"Oh, damn it, I want to change this."
yeah. No, I used a new editing software this week, and well, not the new software, but I exported in a higher uh HD and it kind of threw everything off. But yeah, anyways, I like to listen. So I'm not huge on podcasts. So like I listen to all my stuff on Spotify, and I very rarely, unless I'm watching a live on YouTube, I really don't watch a lot of YouTube stuff.
Unless it's stand-up stuff, then I like to
Right.
watch it,
Right.
or if it has like media involved,
I feel
you
like
know.
that's what you go to sleep to is vulgar comedic like
You're not wrong. You are not wrong. That's how I fell asleep last night.
All right, let's go ahead and bring Dr. Rob. Whether you're just getting into retics or you've been breeding for years, the first place you want to visit is Stewart Design. More and more breeders keep showing up at shows, on Morph Market, and are all over social media. Sometimes it may feel possible to get anyone's attention. Stewart Designs helps small businesses like yours do big things through brand clarity, helping entrepreneurs to start and scale businesses that are easy to know and love. Their work can help any company or industry, but they've done a ton of work for ours. Stewart Design created the brands for US Arc, Canova, Reach Out Reptiles, Coiled, and dozens of other well known reptile breeders. Like many of us, the owner of Stewart Design, Blake, is a keeper and breeder who fell in love with retics through first working with Garrett Hartle. Although Stewart Design does a lot of corporate work, Blake has a passion for working with people in the reptile industry. Stewart Design can help if you're just getting started or you're ready to take things to the next level, you're struggling to stand out and build your presence online or at shows, you don't want to be like the other guys or get lost in the crowd, and you want to make your own way doing what you love. And also, you have big ideas and know your business is special, but you need help sharing it with the reptile community. If something here resonates with you, reach out to Blake and have a conversation. To learn more or get started, visit stewartdesignbrands.com or call them at 855 SD Logos. Clear brands own markets. Stewart Design helps create them. If you are in the market for an enclosure for your reticulated python or any other one of your reptiles, Focus Cubed Habitats is your one-stop shop for not only the best looking cages on the market, but also provide amazing features and add-ons to your cages. We partnered with Focus Cubed Habitats because they continue to innovate and change the way we house our animals unlike any other caging company out there. Their cages are designed intelligently and provide the most stylish and secure housing for your animal's comfort and well being. Visit focuscubedhabitats.com for your animal's caging needs. Again, visit focuscubedhabitats.com for some amazing and stylish enclosures.
We also want to thank VivTech Products for being an affiliate sponsor of the Retic Lounge. Stop by VivTech Products for the best UV spectrum lighting on the market that will enhance and improve your snake's overall well-being and health. Visit vivtechproducts.com and use the code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Again, visit vivtechproducts.com and use our affiliate code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off.
Looking for the perfect accessories for your hatchlings or juvenile retics? Look no further than Heli Guy Serpents. Our sponsor, Chris Sexton, is coming in hot with an amazing 3D printer, creating top-notch perches and other caging accessories for your beloved pets. Enrich your retics environment with their high-quality products. Use our promo code TRL10 for a 10% discount on your purchase. Visit them today at heliguyserpents.com and start giving your pets the best. Heli Guy Serpents, the premier source for 3D printed caging accessories. Again, that's www.heliguyserpents.com and use our promo code TRL10 for 10% off all of your 3D printed accessories today.
Coke on. Let me see if I can guess which window this is. There we go. All right. What's going on, Dr. Coke?
Not much. Just trying to get settled in on a Sunday night. So it's all good.
Appreciate you taking the time out.
Yeah,
Ah,
absolutely.
I could talk for hours in reptile medicine, so it's all fun for me.
Is that an animal in the background that I hear?
No, it's my wife trying to text me.
Oh, okay. I was like, please, let's dive into which animal that's making that noise.
No, my wife's out with a friend of hers, so they're having fun.
Cool.
So she travels for a job, so I get to stay home with the kids and work. So it's all good.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, me and Dr. Coke aren't like buddies, but we happen to run into each other at Carpet Fest, Texas Carpet
Cool.
Fest. I should say that was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks from when you guys are going to hear this, and got the opportunity to exchange numbers and invited him on, and he was nice enough to come on. So, Dr. Coke, if you don't mind, kind of jumping in. I just kind of want to hear like how far back your love for animals started, all that good historical that kind of led to you going the veterinary route.
Yeah, well, my family's always had animals, always had fish, dogs, occasional bird. Parents raised birds off and on, and bred birds off and on, when I was growing up and stuff. Lots of fish tanks. Not so much in reptiles because mom was a big fan. So I would go catch horn lizards out in the backyard and, play with those because that was cool in West
think
Texas
that-
when I grew up.
I think that's something that relates to a lot of our listeners, not
Yep.
being able to keep them, but being fascinated by them at a young age.
Oh yeah. So of course back then they were like these giant lizards that, when you put in your hand, it like covers your whole hand. Now
Right.
it's like, wow, they're so tiny. So I guess we all grow up in a sense. But
You said
yeah,
West Texas, like El Paso, or
for at least pre-high school, middle school, it was in Midland, Texas.
okay.
So right in the middle between the Panhandle and West Texas, right in the middle there. Then I ended up my parents moved us down south of Houston, so that's where I went to junior high and high school.
All right. And so you said you weren't able to keep reptiles growing up. What kind of birds did you guys keep?
Oh, my parents have bred finches, budgies, think that was kind of the biggest thing. They mostly did finches way back in the day. We had parrot here and there, um, dogs off and on. Then kind of getting towards the post high school moment, then kind of moved out on my own. Was at undergrad at Texas A&M. Then that's when the reptile bug kind of hit. Though I will say I actually started with frogs because I was a fish person too. So frogs from fish was just a poison dart frogs. In the early '90s when everybody was getting frogs in by the box load. So I ended up doing some dart frog stuff, and that was fun.
Yeah, those are great.
Then once I got a chameleon, and that was it.
Yeah.
So that's why I
What
became.
kind of chameleon?
Oh, I was a veiled chameleon. This was back in the day before the main internet, when you had like Usenet groups. You had to type everything in, and everything was in dot matrix type printing and stuff. Ages me a bit, but someone put a posting for baby veiled chameleons that was, I think it was $40 at the time, and they were selling for like $200 plus for a baby, like hatchlings and stuff. Like I said, early '90s. And it was like, these are all metabolic bone disease babies. Some of them are better shaped than others. Some have crooked bones, but they've been treated. They seem to be stable. They're eating, etc. So I was a sucker, and I try to think how I did that. If I mailed in a check, I can't remember. Old time how we did that, but
Western Union.
yeah. So in it, little box, little chameleon pops out, and I got hooked on that just a bit. Frogs eventually kind of dwindled out, and added some more chameleons over the years. Then I did a lot of chameleon stuff, and of course, as all reptile people do, unfortunately, we get 200.
Right.
So I did that too, just all over the taxa, just different things in the '90s. Everything was coming in wild caught at the time, so it was just a plethora of options. Being a vet student at the time, kind of afforded me a little bit of flexibility because I knew enough to be dangerous. So I dealt with wild caught stuff, which is definitely has a lot of ups and downs.
Right.
Dealing with all those. But it was fun. It was definitely a wave. That's when reptile medicine really just kind of really started kicking in, and that's when the reptile amphibian veterinarians really started back in the '90s. So I kind of was in that first wave of vets that really hit the ground running, and just everything was coming in, and that was the beginning of the whole leopard geckos, bearded dragons, ball pythons are still this trash species that came in from Africa that was all wild caught,
Right.
nothing fancy. There's yellow bellies, but no one knew what they were at the time. It's like, oh look, this is a cool variant. Who knew? Should have saved all those.
Right.
So, just the crazy things that were back then. Then once I graduated vet school in '96, I went on to a private practice in Houston and just really built a practice there. I was just a dog and cat clinic, but she wanted to bring in exotics. So I saw a ton of birds. At the time, it was the largest private pet store, just literally a mile down the road from the clinic. So that worked out well. Did a lot of work for them, and they referred stuff to me. So it was just saw everything. And of course, reptiles are my fascination. So I saw a lot of those too.
Did you did you go to veterinary school with the intentions of specializing in exotic species, or?
Yeah, I worked at a dog and cat clinic that
Okay.
saw exotics, and a decent amount of exotics. So I going into it, that was kind of my thought, is I would go and do dog, cats, exotics, just kind of have it just a all over general practice. Though as I went through vet school, the exotics kind of get more and more hooked in there. Of course, the chameleon didn't help, and so I started really focusing in on exotics, and obviously reptiles, to a high degree. Then by the time I graduated, I wanted to do exotics as a large part of my practice. See a few dog and cats here and there, I guess, pay bills, but just the exotics is just what's going to keep me going. then as I got in practice, and it just kept going more and more exotics, and just where it's where I found my passion, and it's like those pair of gloves that fit, those pair of jeans that fit. It's just like it just kept getting better and better.
Now,
And
now
no, go
that
ahead.
I figure there's it's pretty hard to find a reptile vet or one that's pretty competent. Um, was it hard to get the education in the exotic stuff for you? Like,
Well,
or do you feel like you gain that knowledge kind of working in the field?
both, yes.
Okay.
In a way, because what happens that in the
Yes.
90s, we didn't. I mean, there were a few textbooks out there in reptiles, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
There's textbooks on avian. There was a textbook that came out around that mid 90s on ferrets, rabbits, and rodents. So all this stuff was really just coming together during that time period. Dr. Mader's book, his first edition of Reptile Medicine Surgery, came out in 95. So that was the newest thing. That was very clinically based. There's Fred Fry's book and a couple other books beforehand that were great, but they weren't as modern clinical in practice. So Dr. Mader's book was the first one that really came out that was very clinically oriented. Then just seeing things, and at the time it was just a lot of stuff we just didn't know. We knew about metabolic bone disease and calcium. Of course, back then it was crappy Vitalites. Then the UV 310 from Zoomed came out. Yeah, so it was
Right.
back way back in the day that all this stuff was starting to hit the market. And Zoomed was started, and all these other companies, Bean Farm and Reptile. I mean, all that stuff was coming up at that time, and they were small businesses. Now they're much bigger. But yeah, just getting together, going to a reptile conference every year. All of us hung out, just sharing stories and trying to figure out, help each other with different various cases and stuff, which is great. Hang out at the bar and you'll learn about reptile medicine type thing.
Yeah.
So, reading any of the textbooks, all the papers that came out, even the European vets had their own things. So the one thing about, at least with the reptile amphibian veterinarians, we grabbed onto the European side of things. So we collaborate a lot with our international colleagues. And I think that really helped us because they had resources and knowledge. We had resources and knowledge, and just combining some of those together, we're able to do some awesome things together.
Awesome. Now, like you were talking about, metabolic bone disease and everything. When did you start to see a lot of the things that today make reptile keepers start to panic about, like the nidovirus or arenavirus and all those other the ones that today can be like collection wiping and just wipe things out? And when did that start to kind of surface?
Oh, it varies. And back in I think it was in 97, I presented a paper on this skinny tail, pencil tail disease in leopard geckos, for example. People knew it as pencil tail. I was presented with a bunch of them that were dying at a local breeder, and when I was in Houston, and ran a bunch of tests, couldn't find anything. Then it was like they're dying. I mean, at the time, these were jungles and different patterns that were all coming out at the time. So they were like $1,000 geckos just dying left and right. We're talking dozens dying a day.
Oh,
I mean,
geez.
he had a pretty large collection. And of course, that was brought in from a couple different breeders too, saying, what happens when you bring in animals without quarantine? Boom. So I went back and we redid all the testing. Then somehow, some way, I got lucky and just found a bunch of crypto oocysts.
I think that's the only time you'll ever hear I got lucky and just happened to run into a bunch of crypto.
So, went through, then, started testing multiple animals. At the time we were still early in the whole crypto of snakes, at least in the serpentis side of things. Now we know that at least in geckos, it's not serpentis. It's Cerophyllum cinvarani, because it originally was varani, then it went to Cerophyllum, now it's back to varani. But with time, we didn't know that. And this particular thing, what was unique about leopard geckos is more lower GI than upper GI. And snakes is mostly stomach. Though I did hear from other people who have had cases, like in one group had rosy boas that had intestinal crypto. that wasn't
Interesting.
that was serpentis negative. So most likely that may have been a Cerophyllum or some other species. I mean, there's hundreds of different species of crypto. We don't know them all yet. But in this case, we presented it, and it was kind of one of those things that no one knew about it at the time. It just was like, oh wow, now we know what causes this. Of course, treatment's the bitch. So because there's not really a good solid treatment for it. I mean, I've done a
Right.
few things with some different antibiotics, some medications where I can clear it, but I won't say cure it. So I've had some reasonable success on like the pet side of things. Unfortunately, when it comes to the breeder side of things, it's bad. I mean,
It's just hard to get it under
disinfect.
control.
Oh yeah, the disinfection is a nightmare because you almost have to use like straight ammonia,
Oh.
straight bleach, not together. Don't do that.
Yeah,
Never
don't-
together.
yeah, that's-
I did that once on accident because you're supposed to label bottles. When I was working at a pet store, they didn't have them labeled, and I mixed the two together and tried to dry clean my lungs with chlorine gas. That was not good.
Oh, yeah.
So I can
Kids, don't
say
kill your
always read
snakes,
the
don't kill 'em
labels.
yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
Man.
but with crypto, it's weird because sometimes I think there's different strains, and you'll have snakes in a collection. No one else is positive, and they probably had it for years. Then
Yeah.
there's times when it go in a collection and wipe out the whole group.
Mhm.
It's got to be some particular strain or something else that's in there we don't know. Because I've seen some collections, literally, I swear the animal's probably been positive for years. They have no real biosecurity. And
Right.
100 snakes are all fine, except for those 2 skinny ones. Whereas I know
How
in
do
some zoos where it's wiped out 100, 200 animals in several
geez.
months.
Do you think it's species dependent? Like, do some species hold up against it better if they're hiding it dormantly?
Yeah, like I've heard
Possible.
retics with at least Nido. They don't tend to really show the symptoms, or IBD, but you see a boa with any one of those viruses, and surely it's a pretty quick death.
Yeah, it just really depends on, is it genetic strength, with inbreeding and other genetic traits that we don't see.
Yeah.
That's either, the inner ear issue with these wobbling snakes. We look at all those other things that come with some of these color genetics that we just don't see. And that could go with immunity strength as well. Because there's a lot of times, I mean, there's animals that 2 animals in one cage, one is respiratory, one doesn't.
Mhm.
The other one never gets a respiratory infection. So, I mean, is there a subtle genetic shift where that one's immune system is weaker, or is there some stressor that one's getting, the other one's not?
Yeah. Now, crypto, how do you test for? Is that fecal? Is that a swab? How does that work?
There's a couple different things. On necropsy, it's pathology. You send the samples off to the lab. A lot of times what I'll do is if they can't afford to send it to the lab, I'll take scrapings of if it's a leopard gecko, I'll take scrapings of small intestine. If it's snake, I'll take scrapings of the stomach, just the inner lining, put that on a microscope slide, then do what's called an acid fast stain. And if it's there, it'll show up.
Okay.
Now, if I don't see it, doesn't mean it's not there. It just means I just didn't find it.
Yeah.
Because it's very specific, but not very sensitive.
Okay.
Whereas you can do PCR testing, which is the swab you can send out to the different labs around the country. Now that's very sensitive, and for the most part can be fairly specific to that particular one. Just depends on, in the case of crypto, you have multiple different species.
Right.
So what some labs do is they'll do a general crypto test. Then sometimes you can pay extra to have it speciated out. I tend to send my samples to University of Florida to their wildlife disease lab because I think that's probably the best one. It's the most expensive, but I think it's by far the best. And they will basically take the samples, run it against whatever generic crypto it is. And if it's negative, we're done. If it's positive, then either, in my case, I always have it set up just automatically. If it's positive, just run it. They otherwise will contact you, ask if you want to pay again to have the second test run. But
Okay.
that's when they actually speciate it out to the different ones. Because there's some that are mirrors. I see a lot of crypto and fecal samples on a snake. It's probably because of the rodent. So just because you see crypto in the fecal doesn't mean it's there unless it is from a tissue or histopath where they actually see the crypto growing
Okay.
in the cells. Now that's different. But yeah, we'll see. I see a lot of, where you get your mice from. Our distributor where we get our mice from here at the zoo, they have microsporidia, which is not pathogenic. It's just in the rodents, but we'll see it. And cryptosporidia, which is obviously, you got to speciate it out. And most time when we see it, they speciate out. It's Mirus, no problem. But if it comes back Serophyllum, varani, or one of the other species, then we got to address it.
Man. And that we were talking a little bit about that over at Reptilandia about, rodents carrying some of these things, which is pretty mind blowing to me. I think I even saw Nathan's expression on his face kind of light up when you said that. It's kind of crazy to think that, the rodents could be carrying some of this stuff too.
Yeah, I knew some of that for sure, but it is the scariest part of, I guess, reptile keeping. It just kind of brought it into perspective for me.
But the Burus is not pathogenic to snakes.
Okay.
That's the key, is that it's just a pass through.
Okay.
Just they're eating it. It's a rodent crypto, not a reptile crypto.
Got it. Okay.
That's
so
the
it
thing to
matters
remember,
more
yeah.
if it becomes cellular and starts growing in.
But that's only if it's serpentis,
Yeah,
Serophyllum.
okay.
So that's what I mean by that. Sorry. It's just a pass through in the rodents. Same thing with mites. You'll see, I'll see mites on a fecal, but is it a snake mite or is it a rodent mite? Most times it's rodent
Okay.
mites. Now that being said, when they look at it, if it looks like a snake mite, they'll flag it and we go look at it in the enclosure. But for the most part, it's rodent mites. We'll see pinworms. It's pretty common in rodents. Microsporidia, cryptosporidia, so all that we see in the rodents. Not all the time. It's not guaranteed. We'll get negative fecals too, but sometimes we'll see all that kind of float through.
Interesting.
And that's where that second crypto test will tell you the answer.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't want to condemn a snake for crypto when it could be something else.
Right.
But when they speciate it out and it says serpentis and it's a corn snake's got some GI swelling right around the stomach area. That's pretty typical and pretty bad.
Before we go into any more of viral talk and veterinary care, I want to know where did you jump from your practice and then you landed up working at the San Antonio Zoo?
Every vet's dream.
Well, I in private practice, I was seeing a lot of stuff, and I didn't do an internship or anything at the time. I just was right out of school. Then I was being asked to. I'm seeing all these cases, and I just felt like I was constrained by not having enough knowledge. And some of that was the time in the mid '90s. We didn't a lot of that stuff we're still learning. Everybody was learning, but I wanted to advance my skills to that higher level. So I actually left my private practice and went into do an internship at K-State.
Crazy.
So spent a year at K-State. Their exotic zoo wildlife department, did a lot of zoo work, a lot of just clinic work as well. Then come time when I finish up that, then the zoo residency popped up. So I ended up going to Oklahoma City Zoo and kind of combined with Oklahoma State University for a residency. So that's where I spent time there and just basically just dived right into zoo medicine.
And so now that you're working at the San Antonio Zoo, can you give us just like what do you work with?
Everything. Frogs to elephants is what I tell people. Pretty much I work with everything.
I guess I have a two-parter kind of on that same note, but what was the first like, holy shit, I get to work with this animal, and then like your favorite species to work with at the zoo?
Oh man. I mean, I've worked with so many. I mean, I've been to San Antonio Zoo for over 21 years now. So
I love their king cobra.
It's been really just a cool experience. Got to see tons of different animals. Every zoo's different. Even coming from Oklahoma City Zoo, which has has a good sized reptile collection too. and just their general collection. It's just a different set of animals. And coming here, it was just a whole nother set of animals. And in the last 20 years I've been here, it's all changed off and on.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, even then it's changed and grown.
I will
You know,
say, I will say the first time I went to San Antonio Zoo about 5 years ago, I was pretty impressed with the reptile display in their exhibit. They have like their own house that you walk into, and they have amazing species and different animals there. They have so many different species of vipers that are so awesome to look at.
and that's kind of it's part of the history and everything. When this job came open out of my residency, it was had to be fate essentially, because it's just coming into a place where I had a reptile background. I knew that's what the area of practice I really wanted to specialize in. So coming here, it was just, the collection, the history, with you can see the old pictures of the reptile house being open pillars and cage on the inside. Then they enclosed everything, the history of Joseph Laszlo and all the work that he did with looking at natural history of animals and light cycles and temperature and lighting and those types of things. And then, of course, my boss, Alan Carden, was the reptile carer for many years as well. Now he's the VP of Animal Collections, but it's nice because it just has that whole history of all the different species they worked with. So I feel it's really fortunate and really cool to be able to work here. And now we have a conservation department that is very reptile and amphibian biased in a lot of the stuff they do. So, I mean, it's great. I love it.
Are you were you a part of bringing Komodo dragons into the world?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how many clutches I worked with over the years, but all the last recent ones, yeah, I've been part of those.
Yeah, that was awesome. I got to see them at tiny little babies, and now going and seeing them, they're growing up really freaking quick.
Oh yeah, and they're all being shipped off here and there and spreading the love to everywhere. And hopefully, as I'm also the SSP advisor, the Species Survival Plan advisor for the Komodo dragon work group.
Cool.
That's
so
awesome.
So I do all at least the medical consulting, and then if we have any issues or questions, then I'll talk about the medical side, or if anybody has any problems, they'll consult with me too. So it's pretty cool. So I have a love for Komodos, so I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty cool to work with those guys.
I'm gonna go back to Nathan's question. What's your favorite animal to work with there?
I'm a chameleophile, so that's always going to be my passion is chameleons. But we don't have a couple at the zoo, but definitely the Komodo. Yeah, I got a pretty good love for the Komodo dragon. So not gonna lie,
Was that
cool.
also the first one that you were like, "Holy crap, I get to work with"?
Mine would have been the elephant.
Well, yeah, I mean, I worked with elephants before I got here, and I worked with a lot of different species before I got here, though. Probably Komodo wise, I got to work the most since I've been here, so that was pretty cool. So I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty cool. And there's so many species that I worked with, like the last stone curlew. It's just some kind of fluffy, feathery bird, long legs, that I think it was the last one in North America. That was also like in his 30s. I got to work with the last one ever.
Oh wow!
in captivity.
And what was that?
It was just a normal bird, but it's one of those things, you get to work with them, and I don't think about price tags or rarity. You just work on them, like Aldabra tortoises and things that are over 100 years. Yeah, in the pet trade, that those are priceless essentially, but I just work with them.
It's another day at the office.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty damn cool. Not gonna lie, I'm jealous. Growing up, that was kind of like one of the things that I wanted to do, and life just took me on a different path. And now I see the love and passion that my daughter has for them. And obviously, I'm not going to force her in any direction, but I can keep my fingers crossed that she'll want to work with animals.
Yeah, my kids they like animals, so obviously you can see all the cats and everything, because they're all probably like waiting for me to feed them, but it's my daughter's job, so she's slacking. But haven't forced them on there. So my kids have slowly been asking for different herps and inverts and things. So I'm letting them kind of ease into it, so that way I don't force it down their throat and they hate it. So they're they're like, "Can I get a ball python?" I was like, "How about something else?" No, ball python. Okay, fine. so it's okay. We'll let them play with stuff and have fun.
Yeah, let them find their own interest and build from there.
Yeah.
Now, do you keep your own collection of reptiles, or are you wanting to get back into? Well, first off, like you started keeping chameleons, and then you became a vet, and obviously you have had a great career doing that. Have you gotten away from like the herpetoculturist side? Are you wanting to where are you with that?
I'm trying to think if I've ever not had reptiles in my house. I think I've always had reptiles somewhere in my house for the last 30 plus years.
Somewhere, don't know if it's in the walls or somewhere.
So, but I mean, it's come and gone. I mean, at one point, I think I only had a couple of Russian tortoises. I think that was probably the lowest I've had in my collection. But I've always had something. I have some rosy boas, some sand boas for fun. I'm kind of get back into my Antrasia because I used to have those in the 90s, and moving, divorce, and internship residency, I kind of ended up selling and moving those on. I regret getting rid of all those species way back then
I bet.
because they're all really cool. My Sabu pythons and everything that I just had. So it's just, yeah, I kind of regret all that now. But now I'm kind of slowly kind of getting back into that. So
yeah, Savus are an interesting species. I like them a lot.
yeah, I got them. Yeah, actually, right when they first started coming in, I got several. I had two that were, I think, sat on the tarmac too long and cooked, so they were
Oh, man.
neurologic. So I had them literally sitting underneath my desk for, I can't remember how long. I think for like 3 years before I ended up selling them to someone right before I moved. But they were neurologic, but all the testing, everything was fine, and half the snakes were already dead, cooked. So I think it was just heat. But
Yeah.
they ate, they did fine. They were just like regular snakes. They just were a little neurologic. Okay,
Yeah, little spider
way
ball
neurologic.
python.
Yeah,
They just had a little bit of
yeah.
character to them.
Right.
And I had other Savus that were just perfectly fine, but they were at home, whereas these were quarantined in the office in the vet
Gotcha.
clinic. So, but oh yeah, all those crazy things you had when you had a couple hundred snakes, way back in the day.
I'm curious how you tend to. I don't know. To me, it seems pretty impossible to be able to tend to hundreds, if not how many different species are at the San Antonio Zoo. But how do you manage to stay on top of the care of so many different types of animals?
Yeah, it's not easy, but yeah, I'm board in zoo medicine. That's kind of the umbrella kind of specialty. I'm also board in reptile medicine, so I'm double boarded. But at least in the zoo medicine side of things, even though we're the ultimate jack of all trades, they're the ultimate. We're a generalized specialist or a specialized generalist, depending how you want to do the oxymoron. But essentially, I mean, we have the 60,000 some odd species of animals that's under our care, except for humans. So it's the ones we don't do. Yeah, they're dirty, nasty, and they smell. If you had kids, you know what I'm talking about. My son's about to hit puberty, I think, and he smells now.
Right.
My wife's complaining that he stinks. So, yeah. So for the most part, you have to look at the differences and the similarities between different taxa and species. If I know that a horse that's vomiting is probably going to die because they don't vomit. I know if a rabbit is vomiting, they're also going to die because they can't vomit. Unless things are really, really bad. They both get colic. They both get hindgut issues. So I mean, they have about long ears. They have other similarities in that sense. Ferrets, on the other hand, they vomit all the time. They're fine with vomiting. That's why they're using research for a human model for vomiting. So
Interesting.
the same anti-vomiting meds we use in us was researched in ferrets a lot of times. So
Wow.
you gotta look at those similarities and what's different about the different things. Same thing with reptiles. You gotta look at the different taxa and the husbandry. You got your montane, then you have your arid species. So we just gotta look at those similarities and the background of the husbandry. Then we can pull out the details of their medicine.
It's cool because being a vet is like being a scientist, and you're using like deductive, science to plug and play and see what's going on, because we clearly aren't even close to knowing everything there is to know with different species. So I'm sure when new things pop up, I'm sure it still happens from time to time, which keeps the job from not being mundane.
Yeah, I remember seeing nidovirus way, way, way back when they didn't know it was a virus. I found it was a virus, but I didn't have thousands of dollars to pay for the testing. So, because I was given a bunch of ball pythons that were just dying left and right. This is back, oh geez, 10, 15 years ago. It was a long time ago. And yeah, I sent out samples. University of Florida said, yep, there's some viral particles in there. It's something, but I got to come up with the money to fund it.
Right. Didn't
So,
know what it was at the time.
yep. So at that time, I elected not to fund it, though I probably should have out of my own pocketbook. But yeah, I mean, things like that are always popping up. You never know.
Speaking of that, how has medicine changed over the years on how we're treating these viruses? Because now, I mean, man, what's the old school antibiotic that is prescribed? Basically, even today, a vet will close their eyes, and what's the name of that antibiotic?
Oh, it's vitamin B, vitamin Baytril.
Baytril. There we go. So
it's the vitamin with the big B, not the, it's not
right.
the, it's Baytril, and we always joke it's vitamin B. Everything gets Baytril.
That was kind of like the go-to, but now we're seeing a lot of resistance to it. And so what's that like? I mean, as far as how it's changing.
I mean, Baytril can still work, but I have a thing for antibiotics, so I always like to delve into the differences of antibiotics and where's the infection, where's the source, because certain things Baytril's not good for. So you got to choose the antibiotics that work best for that particular location or that particular type of infection. Baytril doesn't work well in an abscess. Now, if you were to clean out the abscess and open it up, get air to it, and change its pH and blood flow, then it might help. But a lot of times it doesn't really help with those. So you got to choose a different type of antibiotic or go with a topical therapy until blood vessels start growing in. But if you have a situation where it's like respiratory disease or pneumonia or generalized infection in different areas, then antibiotics will work. What is it? Is it gram negative, gram positive? Is it Pseudomonas? Is it Aeromonas? Is it a staphylococcal? So you got to know the different infections, and that's where the cultures come in. I mean, they're not cheap; they're expensive.
Trust me, I know.
So, and then you get a swab, and it comes back negative. That sucks even worse. Yep. I will say that we've been doing a lot of these new DNA probes, which is really awesome. It's really changed a lot over the last couple years, especially the last year. I've been doing a lot more of these. It's more due to the DNA technology where we're actually doing a swab, just like a culture, but instead of trying to grow the bacteria on a plate, they actually will run it through, the chip grid and basically pull out all the DNA for the different bacteria. In this particular case, bacteria, fungi, mycobacteria, mycoplasma. So it'll test for all of them, which is fantastic because I used to have to do 3 different swabs for that. Now I can do it on one. So it's a hell of a lot cheaper. And they'll also give you a higher detail of what's going on there and give you a kind of a quantitative amount of how much bacteria is in there. Because if it's like 1 colony of Pseudomonas, I'm not going to worry about that. But if it's 100,000 colonies of Pseudomonas, yeah, I'm going to worry about it. Because that's kind of gave me an idea of quantity of what the bacteria is in there. Then I can look at the genetics of that bacteria because I'll actually take that bacteria and run the common, the little plasmid rings for resistance. They'll actually check for those DNA as well. So then they can see if it has the resistant genes. And if that pops up in that bacteria, then they will give you the best antibiotics and give you a whole grid chart of what antibiotics work best and what don't. Just like for a culture, but in this case, it's actually looking at the DNA of the bacteria that way. So it's a little bit more sensitive. Now you get a lot of a lot of extra stuff. You get a lot of different bacteria in there. So you kind of have to read between the lines because there's a lot of bacteria that are no big deal. But there's some that are definitely pathogens, E. coli, salmonella, all the buzzwords we know about. So it'll pick up all those too and speciate those out. So it's pretty interesting. And it's I think it's changed a lot. And I know a lot of my exotic vet colleagues a lot of them switched over doing a lot more of these types of DNA testing for culture stuff. And I think it's helped a lot.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that was one of the last tests that was ran on my email.
Yeah, I think so.
And yeah, still crazy to find that nothing really came back. No fungal bacteria, nothing. It was pretty crazy.
But that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I could say, no, not that one. Let's see which. No, she's not up here. My wife swore one of the cats had a urinary tract infection. I thought she was fine, but I took it to the clinic, did a sterile sample from the bladder, which should be no bacteria in the bladder. You do it sterile and you prep and stuff. Send out to the thing, and it's a DNA probe, so it's super sensitive. 0 bacteria. So I could definitely say that's a good thing because there should not be bacteria in there.
Right.
And that if they found a ton of bacteria, then urinary tract infection. So the fact that it wasn't a urinary tract infection, in that we didn't see any bacteria on the slide when we did it in house before we sent it out. So in that case, it worked.
Yeah.
So if it's not there, it's not there. Whereas on a culture, sometimes it may sit in the hot car, or the sample may have been sitting somewhere, and sometimes there's just bad luck with the sample sometimes. Whereas this is a little different because it's DNA.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nice to know there's less variables.
Yeah, so it's just really changed a lot. So really, it's kind of revolutionized kind of how we've been doing some things.
Any like complicated or creative cases come to mind at the zoo where you really had
There's
to
a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, can you
There's always a bunch.
Can you talk about one that comes to mind in which you really were like stretched creatively to figure out what the heck was going on?
I mean, there's a lot of different things. I mean, Komodo dragon, Bubba, our large male that passed away last year. He's probably one of them that definitely was one that was kind of publicized a lot because he was because we did media stuff with him. Because at the time, it's been about 8 years now, that he started getting to the point where his just joints are just giving out, and he was just hard moving around, just really down, lethargic. Anti-inflammatories weren't working. So at the time, I just started doing acupuncture coursework, so veterinary acupuncture. So yes, he was one of my guinea pig cases, index cases, if you will, at the zoo with acupuncture. And
did you play meditation music in the background and give him some lavender essential oils?
No, I didn't have to. Just stuck needles in him, and sure shit, he got better.
Wow.
No meds. I took him. I did no meds, nothing, just needles. And I mean, I did connect the needles to some electrical stimulation, kind of like a similar to what a TENS unit is for
like
people.
stim therapy.
Back. Yeah. And acupuncture, e-stim is the exact same thing as a TENS unit. Except a TENS unit is kind of it's trying to hit a nail with a sledgehammer versus hitting a nail with a small hammer. I mean, you use a sledgehammer, but it's a little bit overkill.
Right.
And it's not very accurate.
Where were you 2.5 years when I was going through back surgery and all this crap? I should have done more acupuncture.
No, I have done acupuncture. I have had practitioners, I've had acupuncture done to me before. Back is one of them.
It's really cool when you get it done. As soon as they put it in, you feel that muscle just go and just release. It's really awesome.
Oh yeah, it's a Daqui type of sensation. It is definitely different of a sensation. And I didn't teach him anything about placebos or how it affects or it works. And it's not like it was like 1% to 2% better. I mean, we were talking quality of life, potential euthanasia on the table.
Yeah, it sounded.
Then 2 to 3 months later, we're talking, I wonder how long he's going to live. How many more years he's going to live now? I mean, it was that dramatic. I mean, we did like 8 sessions over I can't remember, like 3 months Then I think we ended up doing over the latter part of his life. I think we did about 22 sessions
Wow.
overall. Like every quarter or so, we'd go and we have a schedule on the calendar. Sometimes we'd do it, sometimes we'll skip it, or we'll push it back a month or two. But what was interesting is that, when we started the therapy, it was going to the fall. So it shouldn't work if it's getting into wintertime, because we know what do reptiles do? They slow down, they get cold. What happens to us when we have arthritis in the wintertime? We slow down, it gets cold, things get stiff. I mean, Chinese describe that differently about stagnation and flow of qi, and that you can think about that with your joints when they're stiff, and you warm them up and they get better. Well, not better, but they seem to move more, and that's because you're warming them up, getting the energy flow through that joint. So, and that's when he started improving us through the winter months.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's
Okay.
where I was looking at it going, that's why I felt it worked.
And I love how you mentioned, you didn't tell them about placebo, you didn't tell them about the healing ancient arts of, and it
Yep.
still managed to work. And that's yeah. I mean, as far as creativity goes, it's pretty damn creative.
And all in all, how long did he end up living after the treatment?
I like about 7 years, 8 years.
Wow.
I mean, it was probably 8 years after that. So I mean, it was pretty good. Then the year before he passed away, we actually did one further step, and that's where we used it's a chemical that's used, or medication that's used in dogs, approved for elbows. It's similar compounds been used in humans, and they've also used in different animals across the world. But this particular product was a new formulation, and it's a radioactive tin in this special kind of a compound where when you inject it into a joint, that the little bit of radiation or ionizing energy from the tin is very short, very small wavelengths, on the order of cell layers thick. So what happens is when you inject it in the joint, it actually kills off the inflammatory cells that's lining the joint, that's causing all the pain, that's releasing all the pain mediators, all the different chemicals that's causing the inflammation of that joint. So it's really cool. You can take that joint, that's steroids, injected in knees and elbows, things like that. It's another type of anti-inflammatory, whereas
Right.
this is using ionizing radiation. But the animal is not radioactive. It's just that joint area, but it's very, very weak. So it's
Mhm.
something that can be done outpatient, which is pretty cool. We did that to him. It was the first reptile in the world treated with it. I know 2. We were the first. Then I talked to another zoo, and they ended up being the second one. I guess I can say National Zoo because it made media, so it's not like it's hidden anywhere. So I
Right.
talked to them about it because I forgot. I think they called us about some ideas on one of the animals they had. So I mentioned what we did, and then they tried it, and it worked on theirs as well. So got I'd say about a good year of therapy out of it. In dogs, it could be about 6 months to a year.
Okay.
So felt pretty good about that. And it's just something that was really cool. It took there's only specialized places could do it. So we had to drive all the way to Round Rock, which is
Oh,
an
geez.
hour and a
Yeah.
half, depending on Austin traffic. So we ended up getting the treatment up there. So it was a big car trip. So Bubba the Komodo got to go on a car trip. So
Not
it
many
was a
people
pretty
get
big
to
deal.
say that.
No.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, you could all look this up on the media because I think we did some media stuff in it too, and press releases, and the company was pretty cool. They donated all the medication,
Oh,
which
awesome.
was, several thousands of dollars worth of therapy. So it was
Yeah.
really, really cool.
The cost of medicine is what
Yeah.
often keeps like just general reptile keepers from
And it's
pursuing treatment or even just taking their animal into the vet. I know in Lucas's case with his AML Dwit, it was a lot of money and the snake wasn't really improving. So I mean, it came down to quality of life as
Yeah.
when we put down any of our animals, but Um, you know,
And it's tough.
yeah,
Unfortunately, post COVID, post this massive inflation, all of our stuff's gone up.
Mhm.
Cost of goods has just gone. I mean, you guys see it all the time.
oh yeah,
Then it all passes us too. And unfortunately, we have to run a business. So
So how do we as reptile keepers then kind of weigh like how much we should be throwing at the animal in terms of finances, and when does
Mhm.
it become, the point
Yeah.
where we need to look at other options?
Or even you as a vet, right? Because I'm sure you
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
had to come to that decision too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my own animals too, so I have to come to that decision, even though I'm in some ways better fit and prepared for that because I'm a vet.
Mhm.
But sometimes I even have to make those decisions, even on my own guys, and it's hard because you're way invested close, so you know exactly how that works.
Yeah.
So, so for the most part, and one of the things that I didn't really cover is that, as a reptile specialist, one of the things that makes us unique is I think and there's only a couple dozen of us, and we all know each other pretty well. We've talked to each other, and for years we know each other. And I think all of us are reptile nerds by heart, and that's what kind of makes us a little unique, um, versus someone that exotic vet that sees reptiles or versus a reptile vet. I think that was and that's not saying anything wrong against the other exotic vets or smaller vets. There's great ones out there. I mean, I can think of several fantastic reptile vets that are boarded. Just for whatever reason, they could have done the board thing, but professionally, life and everything happens, and it's okay. Um, but I think all of us that do reptile medicine do it from the approach of husbandry first. Look at the not just husbandry, but natural history. Looking at the nerdy side of a reptile care, and really looking at the nuts and bolts of montane, I said montane, arid, tropical. Looking at those types of species and looking at the environment they're in. Is it, why do they have metabolic bone disease?
Mhm.
Why do they have all this calcium in their body? Is it because they're getting vitamin D, which we've been told 30 years to give them vitamin D, but now we say we can't give them all vitamin D now. We have to hold back because our lighting is too good, which is putting out too much UV light. Was it really too much, or is it? But it's still not the sun. So there's so many variables, and that's what I get into and I love is the husbandry side, which it's definitely unique among veterinarians, and
Yeah.
that's what we really do is we really preach the husbandry side, and really delve into that part. And for me personally, I've been really delving into like the last 2 to 3 years. I just decided that I really want to focus hardcore back into husbandry. So I've been different podcasts, different YouTube videos, some good, some bad.
Fair.
So, and we know all those because I've seen them all. And I really kind of just really went back into the nuts and bolts and nuances of husbandry, and I just really enjoy that and getting all the different concepts of thermoclines, UV clines, humidity clines. So having all these different variables and different areas within the enclosure, and now we're getting enclosures large enough you can't have a box full of sun. You have to, I guess what's for the current thing in the reptile lighting Facebook group is to have that slice of sun
Right.
light,
Right.
where you have the UV light, the heat, and a part of the enclosure that's focused,
Right.
whereas general lighting for all over, but then you have that focused area where it's warm and UV at the same time with infrared ABC and UVA, UVB. So you have all that area that's the proper slice of sunlight where they can bask. They get their UV, they get their heat, they can go away somewhere else. If they don't need the UV, they can slide over to the heat.
Right.
Because they'll adjust that.
And I've even been recommended. So I'm getting a pair of this upcoming week. I'm getting a pair of a long-term captive Aru green tree pythons. And everybody who's told me, Arus have been hard to establish, or not establish, but harder than other localities to breed successfully and get the babies established. And a lot of people are having success with UV, but I'm even being told, have the UV on for only 4 hours a day. Right. And so even just the limiting factors on that, I'm hearing a lot of what you're talking about on just like the different type of, how we're trying to understand and do these things, because ideally it would be great if you could have the UV on 24, well, not 24, but on a daylight cycle, but have places of shade in other areas where the snake can get to. But, obviously in captivity, most of us are we can't, unfortunately, we don't all have zoo style enclosures.
Yeah, even that's correct. I mean, we can't now, but even when it gets bigger, as you know, heating a large enclosure can be difficult. I mean,
Yep.
you got to get the halogen, the crystal. I forgot what I call the golden, the big infrared halogen type heaters out to get some bigger. That I think is changing because we're all wanting to do the naturalistic type of thing, and that's getting to be the new thing where people are just having one animal instead of 50, and that's fine. If you want to have
Right.
50 bioactives, I'm fine with that too. That's a lot of space.
Right.
But I think there's so many things we could do with that. And I think that part of the growth of our industry is beneficial. We just have to figure out how to balance it.
Yeah, there's got to be a balance somewhere, right? And especially for breeders, because breeders are their own niche within the reptile industry, because we're breeders are supplying people the pets and the animals, and they're a lot of them are doing them in big numbers, and so really having to find a way to try to provide the best, and that balance I think really hones into even breeders are starting to even think differently, not just pet keepers, on how they can be more ethical with their keeping.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of breeders narrow down species, narrow down numbers, focus on what they want to specialize in. Um, I have the 200 reptiles of lots of different things, and I focus down. I'm on the opposite side of the Python world. I do the smaller stuff.
We do too.
You got
Super dwarf retics.
Yeah, but I still have that one. I still have a lone female anthill python, so she's
Oh
pretty
man,
small.
that's awesome.
But she's like 5-6 years old. I mean, she's
Like
awesome.
3 feet.
No, not. I mean, maybe about 30 inches. So,
Okay.
but nah, she's awesome. She's laid slugs for me, but I still don't have a male. My wife won't let me afford a male, so I'm waiting. So someday I'll find a male for her. Same thing with my children and my Stimsons, pair them back up. But yeah, no, definitely. I think that a lot of that's changing a lot. I think just I say the technologies in bioactive, because bioactive has been around, naturalistic or bioactive, depending on how you want to define it, because I know that's it's a buzzword. It could be
Naturalistic.
positive or negative.
Yep.
I mean, that's been around for 100 years. If we just didn't call it that, people digging up part of their backyard, putting it inside, that's still
Yeah.
bioactive.
Seriously.
There's people that do that nowadays. So, zoos have done things like that where they want to have like a naturalistic enclosure, but not all zoos do it that way. And not all bioactives at home are bioactive. Some are just dirt and no bugs in there. That's fine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all learning. I did dart frogs. I didn't put springtails or isopods. I should have. That would have been better back then.
A lot
Yeah, we
easier.
used. Oh yeah, I mean, I think I put an under gravel fish thing, and I think I had some gravel in there. Then I had organic potting soil, which was hard to find at the time. But now it's all different mixes of different things, and the ABG mix wasn't even created then. So it's just all the different things back then that we just know better now, and it's all trial and error. It's all the different breeders, the zoos, the conservation work, the husbandry people. I mean, you got Lori Torlin that's doing all the behavior stuff with snakes and some cool stuff that they're doing with training. So, I mean, there's a lot of things out there that's positive.
Yeah. I've implemented choice base and target training for a couple of my pet retics that I have. One of them being the animal that Nathan sent over to me. And Nathan, just an update for you. She's not in the big naturalistic rack setup because I found out she can squeeze through the back. And so she's in just
we've discussed that.
yeah. So she's in a tub right now. But when I open it up, I can see her just like thinking so much more. And the other day, I just decided, I was like, you know what? She kind of looked like she was in food mode. Let me just stick my knuckle in front of her to see what she does. And she literally smelled it. I thought she was going to bite. And like 4 or 5 tongue flicks later, she just put her head back. And if that was any of my other retics that I don't target train, that would have been them latching onto my hand. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I started doing a little bit of choice-based handling. I wouldn't say exclusively with one of the hatchlings from that clutch, and I've experienced similar things. And they're very curious, very confident. So I like those babies.
So we're on the topic of husbandry, and I want to ask a question that I think will play a role kind of into this. But how can keepers never come into your office?
Goes back to husbandry, learning about the animal. Unfortunately, impulse buys are real. You know,
it's what we
happens.
preach against all the time.
We preach it every episode.
Yeah. It's setting things up, setting it right, looking at the species that you're doing and doing the nuances. Because a bearded dragon and iguana, they're not the same. Yeah, retic and a green tree python aren't the same.
Nope.
They may come from similar areas, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
So you got to know how to set the terrestrial, arboreal, looking at the different humidity, looking at, I will say for retics, getting height actually is a good thing.
Yeah,
too.
Absolutely. Exercise, right? They need it.
Yeah. and I think that's a lot of the problem that we had, berms and retics back in the day is because they didn't move.
It still happens, but
Yeah,
it's getting better now.
We got stuck in. We can just treat this retic like a berm.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and all those things, I think that's a lot of it is just going back and keeping proper, looking at, don't just do something because you're told to do it, question it. Because I could see 2 keepers, and I've seen it, where someone buys an animal from this person that lives in another part of the country. They live here. They keep them the exact same way, but one lives and one dies. And why is that? Well, it's because your location in the house, location, or the amount of humidity in the environment you're in. You're from
like
a dry
Nathan's
climate,
in
a
Utah,
wet climate.
And I'm 2 hours from the water.
Yeah. So it's just total different variances that cookie cutter husbandry doesn't work always. And that's why I tell people that you have to get not the little stupid dial thermometers, but a real digital type thermometer, ideally tied with a thermostat,
right.
which, no one ever hears about thermostats at the pet store because that's an expensive thing over there in the corner of the shelf.
Yeah.
No one wants to buy that, but that's actually really important.
Right.
And you still have to have a thermometer to double check that thermostat because I've had those thermostats turn on and stay on and never turn off.
Right.
So no matter how much you spend on thermostats, they can always go bad.
Yeah.
So just it all goes back to researching the animal you have and trying to fine tune the husbandry. Instead of missing twice a day, maybe you only need to miss once a day. Maybe you got to miss 3 times a day.
Yeah.
You may have it 2 different parts of the house and that humidity is different. And I talk about, I did a lecture to vets this last month, and it was 2-hour lecture, and it's how herpetoculture faces reptile medicine, how they interact. And the first part of the lecture, I was like, I'm not going to talk about medical stuff for 2 hours. You can leave if you want, but we're going to talk about husbandry.
Yep. That's where it all starts.
No one left. And it was still a full room and no one left. And we talked about reptile husbandry and everyone loved it because we just talked about, I had pictures of different brands and lighting, and because veterinarians just don't get that. We just don't get that training. And, I always say veterinarians are a pain in the ass. And we're a pain in the ass. And so are reptile breeders, but we're a pain in the ass to each other too.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a different system where I see you guys as breeders as resources. I don't see you guys as, oh, great, he's calling again. Damn it. I don't see it that way. Yeah, he wants another bottle of Baytril. You know, it's more than just that. And, you know, yes, I've given antibiotics to breeders and clients like that, but it's not just here, go away. It's more like, all right, here's a relationship that we're building.
Right.
Okay, you have this in stock, but I need you text. Nowadays it's easy, text, call, whatever. It's just like you're working on a ranch or a farm. I mean, you're farming, you're just farming reptiles.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. And so I really try to have that type of relationship so we can build upon that to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's huge, and I think that, like, on a more serious note, like, a huge part of, like, not having to go into the vet, like, I had been keeping retics now for 5 years, and that was the first, you know, other than the animal that I took to you that came to me gravid, and she had the one egg stuck in
Yeah.
her that you palpated out. But
Which
outside
worked
of
that time, but the
that,
last one I tried to palpate out went to disaster.
yeah,
So
yeah, and so yeah, that was
sometimes
super lucky.
yeah.
I mean, you were literally you were massaging at the cloaca and where the reproductive tract was, and literally it just popped right out. It was pretty crazy. And that's when I was like, all right, this guy's a wizard. I'm taking him here. I'm taking my snakes here again because I'm very. I've had nightmares growing up as a kid and taking a animal, a snake, to a vet and not getting good advice or good care. And I remember I had my Burmese python growing up. I had it had a respiratory infection, and we took it to an exotic vet when I lived in Miami, and they told me to soak it in water for 3 days straight. And I was just kind of, you know, and this is me back when I was 10 on the internet, you know, on AOL and like even trying to Google it, I just didn't see how that was. And even now, knowing what I know now, I'm like, why would that be the first course of action?
And
But
that's a lot of that goes back to reptiles or veterinarians can be a pain in the ass because sometimes we have to be confident. I mean, sometimes like, you know, confidence and arrogance are two edges of the same blade. There's a fine line there. And I mean, do you want to go to a vet that's wishy-washy or do you want one that's confident?
right,
Unfortunately, go to the confidence and that can also go arrogance too.
right,
But, you know, I try to be confident, but also be the first to tell you an honest opinion. And I'll tell you that, you know what? I have no idea. Let's figure it out.
yeah.
So, and I think that's the key right there is, you know, trying to find that kind of vet that matches who you want to work with.
And that's basically the approach we did with Dwight when we didn't know what the heck was going on. It's like, hey, like we don't know. Let's try to run more tests and figure it out.
Yeah. And we did a stepwise approach because you know what? We didn't know. I mean, we could run $10,000 worth of diagnostics day one, or you start, you know what, was run the basic set first, then go the next step, and just kind of roll into that diagnostic plan.
Right.
Sometimes we get answers, sometimes we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what's frustrating in some cases. It could be pretty rough, fortunately.
Yeah. I got another question, but before that, I want to do a shameless plug for one of our sponsors, VivTech Products. So when we were talking about humidity and temperature readings, I've always used Sensor Push, and Sensor Push has always been kind of the gold standard. They're expensive and they're accurate to 0.3 of a degree for their higher end sensors, but I've been running these VivTech sensors side by side to my Sensor Push ones, and they are at most 0.4 to 0.5 degrees off, and they are a fraction of the price. So if anybody is looking for solid thermometers and hygrometers that you get the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi data to your phone 24/7 at a very good price, VivTech is a great option that it might not be to the T to the Sensor Push, but you're going to save hundreds of dollars going the VivTech route than the Sensor Push route.
And I've known Erica for I don't know how long. I've known her forever.
Erica's great.
Way before she got married, way before she started VivTech, and I know Ryan way back too before VivTech. So I've known them both, and they're passionate reptile people.
They are some of the most.
And
Some
And
of the
I just,
most.
yeah, so I just saw the recent Facebook post where they're basically conscripting their children into helping them while they're doing testing. They're grabbing boxes and helping
Oh
them move
yeah.
stuff around, and they hand test and hand check everything.
Oh, they're
And that's above and
probably some
beyond
of the
what most
best.
places do.
Yeah,
So
as
yeah,
far as what they bring in, I mean, they've run me down their entire procedure, their quarantine, and all the testing and things. They definitely, I look up to them in almost every facet of reptile keeping. And but speaking of that, you know, and we talked about how we can safeguard and not go to a vet's office. What would you say is an appropriate quarantine method for a general keeper or a breeder to use?
there's different ideas in quarantine. Quarantine is not just getting it in and put it in the cage next door. That's not real quarantine, unfortunately. I know it happens. I've done it too. I'm not gonna lie. I've quarantined properly, and I've also not quarantined properly. So I can be guilty too. But really, all it takes is that one animal. Is that their first animal, or is that the 50th one you got? Who knows? It only takes that one time where you bring that one animal in, that one ball python starts breaking with respiratory infection in 5 days, and your collection's dead in 30. Yeah, that's the nidovirus right there.
Yeah.
So, that's the kicker. And how long is that quarantine? That's a good question. That answer is still up in the air. I mean, I go with a 60 to 90-day quarantine as a minimum standard. That's 60 days for like a captive bred, otherwise historically normal, no problems. In the wild caught stuff, I'll go 90 minimum. Because sometimes, snakes, sometimes it takes them that long to get fecal samples.
Right.
And you got to run fecal samples, especially in wild caught stuff.
Yeah.
You got to check. Lizards are just chock full of stuff.
Yeah, you're
And
almost
that,
always going with
yep,
flagella and treating for parasites.
yep.
Almost immediately for most, even in the chondro world, most people who get the imports, they're treating right away for parasites.
Yeah, but don't treat right away. That's the other thing is don't throw drugs at them immediately.
Yeah.
Oh
Get them
yeah.
hydrated first.
Hydrated
and that's
yeah.
get them hydrated. If you can get a meal in there first, that'd be even better. I know sometimes it's hard on imports. Now I'll gavage feed them, or I'll do an artificial type food supplement if I have to sometimes. But especially these fresh. I mean, I've had how Uromastix scare back when they first started coming in. Oh, gee, about 20 years ago when they first started, they were all thin and emaciated. So I took a group of them and I just syringe fed them every day, every other day until they started eating their own. And for some reason, I don't know why I got rid of them. I should have kept them because now everybody wants them and they're expensive now. Back then, they're like $20 a skinny lizard. Now they're like a couple $100. So I should keep up with this stuff more than 20 years, I guess, at a time. But yeah, no, you got to get them hydrated. You got to get them established and eating. Then we can worry about the parasites.
Yeah.
For the most part, parasites will kill them, but mostly it's because they're stressed and not eating and not hydrated, and they have other health issues first that we got to correct.
Like humans get parasites, and it's not it's not going to kill us because for the most part we're healthy and running. But I could definitely see with a fresh import and the stress and not eating, and who knows how long it takes for them to get a drink from the time that they're bottled up and sent overseas.
And the flights and dehydration and all that stuff. So yeah, get them hydrated first, then we can worry about the parasites and other things down the road. And viral screening, I mean, if you're getting ball pythons, you got to get them nidovirus tested, chondros, everything else. I mean, it's so prevalent in there. And as much as I would love to say breeders are honest, not all of them are.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some absolutely lie to me just to my face, and I know the answer.
Yeah.
Because that person got that animal from them and it died of X, Y, or Z. And they're like, nope, not me.
Yeah. I've actually seen examples of breeders sending the same negative nido screening to multiple people on different animals, thinking that
Mm.
wasn't going to catch up to them.
Yeah, unfortunately, too much of that happens still.
Yeah.
It's
So 60, 90 days as a minimal standard.
Mhm.
And then obviously if you have the ability
And that's in a separate area,
yeah.
ideally somewhere else, not at your house, somewhere else,
Yeah.
completely non airspace oriented. If that's not possible, then a completely separate room,
Okay.
a completely separate area that's not even close, ideally.
Yeah.
Gloves,
So for me,
different.
that's upstairs, and
Yeah.
and then the rest of my collection's in the garage.
Yeah, that's how it'd work. Yeah.
That's as far as I can get at least. And then I
Yeah.
do have my own tools that I use
Mm-hmm.
upstairs that never come into the garage.
Yeah, own tools, your own disinfecting, latex gloves. I know it sounds silly, but latex gloves work.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, post COVID or during COVID, it was tough to get them, but now everybody's got them and they're on clearance. So no reason why you can't get them now.
Yeah. I think I have probably like 500 in my garage right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a barber and use them all the time, so I just have extras all over the place.
Yeah. So it's great because you can just go and just pop them off and go to the next one. So
Mhm.
when I'm doing a lot of frog work, I mean, I'm constantly just popping gloves on and off, going between different frogs and stuff when we're swabbing for chytrid or things like that, screen. So yeah, no, definitely try to keep your animals separate. Get vehicles in just to check. Get a crypto screen. There's a cheaper one, there's a more expensive one. Just depends on what you want to get.
Yeah.
I mean, I offer both.
Mhm.
Yeah. So one's less than 100, one's a couple hundred. So depending on the clinic and the pricing and what part of the country you're in and how much cost of living adjustments are, but they're all variable in pricing. But yeah, I mean, it's important.
I got some wrap up questions that our buddy Glenn McClellan, we've had him on for the history of captive reticulated pythons, or the captive history of reticulated python series that we did. He's a current vet student at UF. And he had some great questions that he wanted us to ask as far as a conclusion and wrapping up that goes directly towards veterinary school and just those kind of things. But before we do that, I had that question that I told you at the very beginning that I wanted to ask you about a decision. But have you ever worked with Apodoro Papuana?
A little bit. Not recently. I did work with one, I like to say back when I was in Oklahoma, but then I think there was a private back in Houston when I was in private practice. There's only been a couple. I mean, they're not very common in general.
They're not. I was going to ask you if you could help. So I have the opportunity. A friend is moving here to Austin and can't keep snakes, and that's the last in his collection that he's offering to let me have. I wanted to see what your thoughts were on. It's a rare and a cool species. I wanted to see.
Yeah, they're
Sorry,
cool
excuse
snakes.
my ignorance. What is it?
A Papuan python. So
Okay.
basically the Indonesian olive python, but way better.
Okay.
Yeah. So, no, they're cool. It's been a long time since I've had a chance to. I just saw some not too long ago at another zoo collection, but yeah, they're cool snakes.
Yeah, I just heard that they're a little mean. This one's like been imported now for 2 years, but is a wild caught.
I mean, scrub pythons could be nice.
Yeah, real nice. Yeah, I always say that the scrub pythons are like the Michael Phelps of retics, just faster, more athletic. But yeah, no, I'm on it. It's free. He wants to just keep it here because he's only going to be an hour away, and he could come visit it. But he said it was by far his favorite python that he's ever kept. And this is Theron Lance, by the way, Nathan. That he's kept scrubs, he's kept retics.
He's moving where?
To Austin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Me and him need to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, he's moving to Austin, so he's gotten rid of like 90% of his snakes, and he asked me, he's like, hey, I was going to offer this up, but I really love this girl, and I'm going to be like an hour from you.
Wait, did he get rid of the Crocs too?
I think so.
Why is he not talking? All right. Gonna yell at him.
But yeah, I wanted to hear your thoughts if you ever had experience working with them. But
Just a little bit, not much.
okay,
Other than just peripheral stuff. But they're cool snakes.
yeah, no, I think that I mean they look amazing. Their head shape is unlike any other python that I've seen, and so I'm intrigued. I'm interested, um, but let's get up to these wrapping up questions. One thing that I
Sure.
wanted to ask is so from Glenn, he said there's typically a great degree of philosophizing required for veterinarians. Who do you owe your moral compass to and why?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, this guy's a big nerd.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Going back to influences of people I've worked with over the years, at least with veterinary medicine. Of course, go to your dad, your parents, for that overall moral compass. But when it comes to at least the style of medicine and how I tend to practice, one of my first mentors when I was in high school, I started working at a vet clinic and spent my summers there for quite a few years, going to vet school until I had to go full time. And his one of his veterinary philosophy was teaching, and his goal was to have the receptionist know as much as the kennel person, know as much as the technician, know as much as the veterinarian about the basics of everything.
Yeah.
The receptionist can tell you exactly how a distemper vaccine works, how it works, and the vaccine schedule, what parvo disease is, and can explain the pathophysiology of it in basic terms. So that was his philosophy, and he did that with his clients too. He basically educated the clients about what was going on. It wasn't just it's this, here's this, go away. He's a talker. I'm a talker. So it was great because even though he hopped room to room, but in those minutes, he really tried to help the individual, the owner, understand why. And I think that's what helps me help you guys make that decision, is because I give you the why, and I want to be the partner with you guys when it comes to those types of things. Good decisions, bad decisions. I'm there to help guide you. I'm your moral compass in a way with your pet.
Right.
Yeah.
But that always stuck with me about, I still use some of the same stupid analogies he used way back in the day and how he described things and taught things. Because he used to close the clinic down half a day on Wednesday, and that was education. The whole staff,
Oh, that's awesome.
after a staff meeting, he just picked a topic and talked for 2 hours on a certain topic. Heartworm disease, vaccines, shampoos, flea control. So going back, and just that staff was super educated, and I got to be a part of that, and I still feel that way. So
Yeah.
and I think that's what helps me conceptualize a lot of these treatments and therapies and diagnostics, is I can sit there and I'll explain the why.
Right.
Not just because, but why.
Right. That's important to me as a consumer and as a client of a vet. Is I always like that deep understanding of wanting to know the why, and so when that message can be portrayed, that's huge. But awesome. The next question, he talked about compassion. He wants to bring up compassion fatigue is kind of like an epidemic in the veterinary field. And to be honest, me being a psychotherapist, it's a huge thing for us. And I would say majority of healthcare individuals, whether it's for humans or pets, or I'm even sure that Nathan from time to time probably experiences burnout with cutting and he teaches and also cuts hair. And so burnout and compassion fatigue is huge. So what keeps you ticking? What keeps your passion kind of, what keeps your candle lit?
It can be tough. There's some days it's rough. I mean, I have some clients. I had a client just recently with his iguana he had, and it was hard. I mean, we had to euthanize because it was just a disease that it had, and he took it hard. I mean, I've seen some, people drop off an animal. It's like, yeah, just kill it. I don't care. That type of attitude to mammals and dog, cats to, people. I mean, I almost want to call, a taxi or Uber to take them home. They're so upset for a reptile or a guinea pig or a hamster. I mean, it doesn't really matter what kind of animal it is. That's the first thing I always tell people. You may have spent $50 on the bearded dragon, but that person got the kitten for free.
Right.
So technically, the bearded dragon's worth more than the kitten. I mean, it's being a little crude, but I mean, in some ways, you got to look at it that way. It doesn't really matter what kind of animal it is.
Yeah.
And it's tough. There's some days that I have clients and patients that I've worked with for years, and it's time. In my own animals, I mean, sometimes it's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had lots of animals in our household here. So I don't even know how many ferrets that my wife and I had at one time or another. We probably had a dozen and a half ferrets over the 20 years,
Ferrets are
and
awesome.
they all get just shitty diseases in the end, and different cancer and other types of things. Having pets, it just sucks. So that's my one-eyed herpes kitty right there, laying down. He's doing good. But yeah, it's not an easy thing. Um, you got to do it you got to sit there and you have to be able to dissociate your brain sometimes, and it's tough.
Yeah. Detach a little bit.
And some days I'm better at than others. You just got to try to be able to try to empathize, and it's hard to do both at the same time, be objective and subjective in that kind of situation. But I just try to know my task. I have a job to perform. That's the objective. We got to do this. And if I can make it the most calm, peaceful, reasonable way of doing it, it's going to make the subjective easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy by any means. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but if I can make it smoother so that way I give the owner, and not gonna lie, myself, the technicians, the animal, everybody, if we can make it easier for everybody, that's the better.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And just, I have such a love for animals that I just have to understand that I'm doing what's best for the animal. Sometimes it's even best for the client in a way. It's they can't make the decision. I'm not going to make it for them, but
Right.
sometimes I have to guide them. But I'm never going to tell someone to do something they didn't want to do.
Yeah.
But if that's where they need to go, I'll handhold them and we'll work our way through it. And that's tough. And there's some days that it gets to you.
Yeah.
So, but I have a great wife, kids, come home. It's hard to drop everything when you get
Right.
home, but sometimes I just try to just put that aside and just do what I can. My wife's a vet tech, so she understands to a degree. She also doesn't understand because she knows too much too. So it's like the get over it mentality versus the empathetic, part of it too. So it's
Right.
both ways. And same thing. We're both in the industry, so we both see different things differently, and also the same.
Yeah.
So compassion wise, there's not an easy answer there, and there's some people that just can't do it, and I feel bad for those veterinarians. Uh, just get help.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Come
sometimes
see
it's,
me.
yeah, sometimes it's just a fact of find a friend,
Right.
find some outlet. I always tell students, and I guess you can share this with your student friend. Two P's. I always tell my students two P's: patience and perseverance. Because you're going to get told no a lot. You can't be a zoo vet. There's not enough jobs. You can't be an exotic vet. You can't do this. You can't do that. Well, you just got to be patient. It took me several applications to get into an internship and I saw the interns that were before me, and they were phenomenal interns. that were before me, and those are the persons I lost out to.
Yeah.
And they're all zoo boarded and all, top of their field. And so were the ones after me too. So it's just one of those things where I had to wait my turn,
Right.
essentially. And that's where that perseverance is. You just gotta look at the end goal. You gotta just fight through those high points and those low points. So that's how I look at it that way. And the other thing is hobbies. You got to have 2 hobbies as a veterinarian. You got to have something with a skill with your hands. That can be with or without mental energy. Sometimes that's a third option, but something skill with your hands, a craft, because you got to keep your hands going. And also keeps your brain going. And that's the whole thing. Dementia, Alzheimer's, other thing they talk about is you got to keep that hand and eye coordination going. Yeah, don't laugh. I'm awesome at Sudoku. Don't laugh. I do that every day. And same thing with the my wife makes fun of me at solitaire too. So I'm like level 900 something on solitaire.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I'm about almost 900 now. So, just keep your brain going in that sense. And the second one is some sort of a sport, even though my gut is telling me I'm not doing as much sports as I used to. But in college and through vet school, I fenced.
Yeah.
I loved it. That was one sport that just clicked with my brain. I wasn't raised as an athletic kid. I was raised as you have to get good grades to go to college. That's how I was raised. The sports were like but you need to go to college. You got to go to college. You got to get good grades.
It sounds like it's I mean, it's exactly what we preach in my field as well. I mean, it's you're describing self-care, and then it's also the ability to have the outlet as a therapist to be able to talk to someone, whether it's a colleague or another therapist.
Every therapist needs a therapist, from what I understand.
Right.
And that's the same thing for us, because we're therapists for our pets and patients.
Yeah. Nathan, wrap us up with the last question.
Yeah, so there's a great degree of philosophizing required to veterinarians. Who do you have? Oh, wait,
no, the first one.
Okay, I was like, what? I was like, that sounds awfully familiar. Yeah, when you first read that, Lucas, I was going over our sheet, and I was like, wait, I don't even know where he's pulling this from. This must have been a last minute from Glenn.
No, that very first one under conclusions.
Yeah. What's something that you wish more people understood about veterinary medicine?
We have to run a business, and it's nothing, and we all love animals. I mean, we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't love animals. Now, of course, I'm going more towards the private practice side of things, talking about this. But and we're softies. We love animals. We're all softies, and yes, sometimes we'll give discounts, or sometimes we'll not charge for that this time or next time. But that also hurts us too, because of fairness between different clients and doing things, and it costs money to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like for breeders. I mean, if you guys lost $100,000 a year,
it doesn't help.
You can't breed very well. You can't breed many if you keep spending. Though, with veterinarians, it's not that they're mean or cruel when they give you an estimate and it's too much. It's just what it costs nowadays, and with inflation and everything else, is just, I mean, the veterinary compensation to the veterinarian, you must be making lots of money. That's only a small portion of that bill.
Right.
The vast majority of that bill is paying for the staff, the electricity, the water, the mop water to clean, the disinfectants in the room, the gauze,
the building,
chemicals, the rent, lease,
insurance,
all that comes in. Oh yeah, that too. So all that's part of that bill, and I see it all the time. Such and such gave me $1,000 estimate, and how could they? It's my beloved Fluffy, and I can't believe they would do that to me. And it's like, if you look at that estimate, a lot of it's pretty reasonable. There's differences between where you live.
Right.
If you're in the highest economic area with the highest, cost of living, it's going to be a much higher charge than somewhere, say, south, where it's cheaper to live. I mean, it's the same exact procedure, but for the most part, you get what you pay for too. And there's some clinics that, dental may be $500, dental may be over 1,000. But sometimes, if you look at what you're getting for the $1,000 one, it's a hell of a lot safer for your animal, and you're getting X-rays, and you're getting this charting, and you're getting all the other stuff that's more in depth.
Right.
So you're paying more, but you're getting more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's a good point. I think that happens in a lot of healthcare fields where a lot of people forget that, in order for you guys to even be seen by us, it's a business. We got to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
We got to keep the lights on.
And I try to be reasonable. I'll say, okay, if you can't do this, let's do this, or let's step it
Mhm.
across. We can, all right, if you can't afford this, what's your budget? What can we work with? And we'll try to fit into that budget. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't.
Right.
And sometimes it's just a shot and send them home instead of a full antibiotic therapy. And I feel bad.
Yeah.
And the owners are mad, but then they don't realize that we feel bad because we know we could do so much more, but we just can't. So, because sometimes we give stuff away and it works, but we got to pay for that in the end.
Yeah. Well,
And that's the tough part.
I want to say thank you for coming on, and I mean this was one of our longer interviews, but to absolutely zero regret, because I think that this is a topic that isn't brought up nearly enough as it needs to in the reptile community. Nathan, before we let Dr. Coke out, you got anything else?
Yeah, there's several different resources online to find good reptile vet. One that I would like to plug, just a friend here in Utah. She's been putting together a list. I believe she's adding you to it, Rob. But Reptiles.
Yep.
Mariah Healy. She
Mhm.
has a great, pretty comprehensive list of competent reptile vets that you can find in your area. So find your reptile vet. Make sure you at least know where they are, know their number before you need them. So
Exactly. There's arav.org. That's the Association of Reptile and Amphibian Veterinarians. Now,
Okay.
that's just a membership. Doesn't mean that they're a competent level or anything like that within it.
Mhm.
That's just a membership, but at least that veterinarian cared to join that organization.
Yeah.
I've been involved with them as an officer, as committee members and everything for the last several decades. But that's one resource that has a list of it on there. For the specialist, that's American Board of Veterinary Practitioners, abvp.org.
Awesome.
And that also will list not every one of us, but will list some of the specialists as well. It covers from East Coast to West Coast to Hong Kong to Europe. So we have all over the world. There's only 20 something of us, so there's not very many.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've had a couple pass away over the last several years. So our numbers are hanging in there, but we're all reptile nerds.
This is your time.
Yep.
Well, Dr. Coke, again, thank you so much for coming on. And hopefully we can have you back on to talk more about the herpetoculture side. Obviously, we've talked quite a bit, and I know that you can talk about this stuff for days. So we'll definitely be having
pretty
you
much.
back on
So,
soon.
yeah, anytime, just let me know if you got a topic. We'll cover it.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. That's incredibly generous. I really thank you for your time. It's great meeting you, man.
No problem. Thanks.
Take care, Dr. Coke.
Will do.
All right. Let me see if I can figure this out, Lucas, because I can see you over there.
Well, I mean, he's still in the screen on
I
this
know,
one too.
Where'd
there
it
we
go?
It's over here. Hold on. Oh no, did it disappear? Oh no, we have to hit the down
No,
button.
I
There
found
it
it.
is.
There we go.
There we go.
Technical
All right.
difficulties.
All right. I was really happy with the way that interview came out, and I want to, if any of you are still listening this far in and you're at the end, clearly you guys are enjoying the content. So if you're enjoying the content, there's that link down below, patreon.com the Retic Lounge. Jump on board. We're I think we hit 70 members, and yeah, our Discord keeps growing and getting more popping. So for those of you, that aren't ready yet, that's okay. But just thanks so much for staying plugged in this long.
Yeah. Have a great week, everyone. Remember to hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 1,000. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.